So we're looking at performance management, and the main thing we were thinking about was, you know, the what happens next. But I wanted to start by actually thinking about actually what it is. Now, this is it's a pretty old definition. I mean, he's been writing about performance for a long time. But actually it still says most of what it is generally considered around a continuing process of improving performance. But I think a lot of all of this performance management, it all sounds a bit, the word that keeps coming to mind is sort of quite pedestrian. It feels very processy. And so actually I was then thinking, but what actually are we aiming to do? I mean, a lot of good words in that, in assessing progress, developing knowledge, skills and abilities of people, absolutely. But starting by thinking, you know, what's the ultimate aim of performance management? If we were to, you know, look at what I'd call chunk up and think about it, what actually is the ultimate aim? And please feel free to throw your ideas in, you know, talk, as you know, this is a discussion forum. What would people say as the ultimate aim of performance management?
Unlocking potential.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maximize contribution.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think for me, it is to encourage and assist employees to use the best of their abilities to achieve an overall company objective or aim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Because I think. Sorry, what did somebody just say?
Building of capability.
Building capability, yeah.
The outcome as well would be retention, that they feel there's a future.
Yeah.
Define training requirements.
Yeah. Any thoughts? Somebody, sorry, I can't catch all the names with the way that the screen sets up, but linking it to the organisation. I mean, ultimately, yes, a performance manager at an individual level is about individual performance. But if you think higher up, ultimately, it is about helping the organisation grow and flourish through developing your staff. So for me, when I was thinking about it, the ultimate aim of performance management is to grow the organisation for success, if we're looking at it from from that perspective. And then I dug out a few statistics around performance management, and it would appear from the research that's happened that most people don't like what they have at the moment. So we've got only 14% of organisations saying they were happy with their performance management system. 95% of managers are dissatisfied with their current process. 90% of HR leaders believe their system doesn't give accurate information, and 58% of organisations say their system isn't an effective use of time. And that's not a very inspiring selection of statistics to me. I don't know about you, but if you think of the time and effort that performance management system tends to make in an organisation. And I'm sure we've all been in organisations at different points, or maybe luckily you've been lucky that you haven't. But actually the performance management has basically been the annual appraisal process, which is measured by percentage completion. Nothing about quality of conversations, the changes it brings. The metrics that the business were looked at was percentage completion by managers. And often HR's role was to be chasing up managers who hadn't done their appraisals. And it was just something that had to be done. Very few people actually enjoyed it. And it was just a metric that didn't actually add value, which I kind of think is not what we want to be doing. So I was thinking about it from here. And if we were to think about three different perspectives, so the organisation, the manager and the employee. So before we go back down into the detail of what we want to do and how we might be looking at doing things differently, or how we might need to be doing things differently in some instances, think of these 3 questions. So if you can make a note, because we're going to go into rooms in a minute. What value do each currently get from the process? What value is the organisation getting from the time and the money that we'll be investing in the performance management process? And you can define the performance management process as it is in your organisation, whether you're working with an annual appraisal system, whether you're doing frequent conversations, whether you don't have any formal process, but what value is the organisation getting? And what would they like as outcomes from it? Ultimately, from each perspective, what would be helpful? So think about it as an organisation, think about it as if you were a line manager, and then think about it from the experience of the employee. And obviously, we're all that, we can all think about, what adds value for you from a performance management? And then what are the obstacles? So we're going to spend a bit of time thinking about those. Let's see some things. Right. Let me put you in rooms. How many people have we got now? We've got. Can I use your request if you would please turn your camera and your mic on, even if you don't want to do it in the main room, if you can please do it in the breakout rooms, because it does kind of hinder conversation if you can't see and hear people. So have a conversation about those 3 areas and those 3 questions, and just see what ideas and things you come back with. We'll go for 10 minutes in that. Hope you had a good discussion there. It'd be good to just hear some of the thoughts that were coming up. So if we start with perhaps room 3, Angie, Anthony, would you like to, what did you pick up from the organisation perspective in relation to those 3 questions? Anybody happy to chat?
Yeah, I think for me, well, one of the things that we sort of kind of talked about was about the culture. And it's got to be, about employee engagement, and, that encouraging employees, regardless of what their position within the organisation, they need to be feeling engaged, they need to be rewarded and recognised for the job that they do, and also to be supported. But that culture does need to come, that needs to be from the top down. And I think it's also the terminology and the way that behaviours, and even the wording that's used as well. So yeah, that was one of the key things, was about company culture.
Okay, thank you. And so that was group 3, wasn't it? Well, so group 2, so Anna, Catherine, Cheryl, what did you talk about in relation to the manager perspective? Anybody going to talk to me?
I'm happy to talk.
Thank you.
Apologies. You might get every second or third word, because every time I go on this and there's too many people, I get cut out. Well, I'll carry on until someone tells me to say stop. I think what we kind of concluded was that managers do find it difficult. And as a result of that, sometimes the quality of these reviews are not necessarily good. So a lot of us have put things in place. So some people have talked about designing leaflets to give to the managers to be able to walk through that process to help them. And that's been successful to varying degrees. But I think the main point, particularly from my point of view, is that people management can be quite difficult. We talk about processes, and I think the word pedestrian was used earlier on at this meeting. You're absolutely right. The process is quite pedestrian, but the variable is the individual, and you just don't know how they're going to feel that day, that minute, that hour. And that can change the outcome of how that meeting goes. So for managers, it can be quite difficult if it goes wrong, but also conversely, it can be quite rewarding if it goes really well.
And what do you, I'm not particularly putting you on the spot, it's really just whether you had a conversation around it. What do you think managers, or why do they find it, if we take the skill side away from it, which obviously, can be addressed, what other obstacles do you think there are with managers? Anybody, any thoughts? Confidence, yeah.
I think it's also a time issue. it's I see that in our organization that we do encourage to have very frequent check-ins rather than having just an annual review. But obviously that requires preparation, and that requires also some follow-ups potentially, and it's a time dedication that sometimes then gets, you know, prioritized back to.
And I guess the question I would then throw out for thinking is, you know, is some of that linked to the fact they don't find value in the process? You know, are they investing time in a way that's not creating value for them or the employee? You know, back to that pedestrian, is it a process? It feels time consuming, labor intensive, and do they actually find value in it?
But also, I think it's partly if they're, you know, if they're of a certain profession, if they're statisticians or architects or whatever, they don't see managing staff
Hello.
as part of the role.
I'm well, how are you?
So
oh, they're fine, they're fine. Sorry, who?
if
sorry,
they're managed,
just a moment.
so if they're managing,
Sorry,
they don't see that as part of the role. So actually, the people management part, they don't see that, they don't put that as a priority, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I also think that a lot of managers find it hard because it's often
Ursula?
perceived as a confrontational process.
Yeah.
That the
woman comprehensive. I don't know who
employee
she
may
is. She's
be
going with one
defensive.
disabled boy to wear glasses.
And yeah, it's dealing with confrontation and you know, a difficult conversation potentially when they haven't had training around how to provide feedback. And
I was just going to say the same thing. I think it's sorry, I was going to say the same thing. I think it's the difficult conversations, and it's easier just to put things under the carpet than to address them. So it's the difficult conversations. So it's the skills and the behaviours around that. It's the soft skills to be able to do it, to be able to have the appraisal.
And a lot of that goes back to the culture of transparency and trust and feeling able to have those open conversations. And actually, if we're looking at, you know, the appraisal element in the organisations where they still have that, you know, the appraisal isn't about the giving bad news, is it? You know, certainly I always taught managers, if you've got things that, you know, need addressing in terms of performance, you don't save them up to the annual appraisal process. That's day-to-day line management responsibility.
I totally agree there. I think that's what we were saying in our group as well. I mean, it shouldn't come as a surprise, should it? Somebody's either one-to-one or appraisal that, you know, there's an issue. And I think some of the managers that in our company, we've had that issue, and we're sort of saying to them, it's far easier to deal with it as you're faced with it, instead of leaving it then to have that conversation where weeks or maybe months have passed. So we've sort of steered away a bit now from annual reappraisals and regular one-to-ones. We've just talked about them as being performance development conversations that regularly happen with staff, and that, okay, you can have that sit down formal each quarter, but this document that we've given them, use that as your conversation with them. So you've just got a rolling record of everything that's gone on and how you're addressing that, and, you know, as well as when you bringing up any poor performance or issues, use that as a tool for, you know, praising them for things that they've done as well. So they become more comfortable having those conversations with staff if they bring it in as an everyday, you know, natural thing to do.
If I could just add, actually, Tracy, that I think on the actually it's not just the difficult stuff. I think it's getting comfortable with giving people praise, you know, a praise for something. Actually saying you've done well. I think they find that hard, and it's actually having some evidence to build on that. And it is getting the practice. Sorry to interject.
No, it's fine. And actually making it real and about a proper example, not just you've done really well this year or this week, but actually what were they doing, the behaviours. Group one, just conscious of time, I always run out. Group one, just a quick, what did you come up with from the employee perspective? That was Catriona, Elaine, Lindsay. What did you come up with in relation to those three questions from the employee perspective?
I
think our group were of the same opinion that it was viewed as just a tick box exercise. And quite time consuming, and it didn't have any importance around it really.
Okay. It's a bit sad really, because I mean, I'm not disagreeing with it. I think there's a lot of, but I think, you know, it has the potential. I'm still in my head, I've never found a word that's not performance management, but it, you know, it's about the growth, it's about moving forward. I'm not talking, you know, underperformance, which is a whole different thing. You know, it's about that moving forward and how you can work with somebody, which should have positive connotations. You know, it's development, you know, development reviews, call them, but you know, as soon as you start putting performance in it, it just feels somehow it goes to negative.
But do you think that there are managers out there that have seen the value of investing in turning around someone's performance?
Think you should do it now.
I would hope so, yes. I mean, and I think that is so much back to the culture. It's about having those growth cultures, it's about having those empowerment cultures, and actually having the alignment with all your vision, your mission, knowing what the business objectives are, so it's all aligned. Let's just go on.
No, I was just going to say, I think just given the pace of our organisations, you know, when you know, as a HR leader, I try to talk about that investment, but things move at such a pace that sometimes people just don't want to invest that time, because as we all know, we're all very time poor on occasions. Yes.
And that, yeah, it's back to, if people are not seeing a value in it, they're not going to invest the time. You know, we all do it, do we? You know, we don't spend a lot of time on things we don't see the value. So just some thoughts that for a discussion now. I'll put you back into groups so you can all have more of a chat. But, you know, thinking about, you know, can people clearly articulate what good looks like? You know, whether that's in quality of work, whether it's in behaviours, when it's in alignment to values, but, you know, how do they know when they got there? And where do you put your focus? Is it around input or output? We've had quite a lot of debate in the last year in terms of, you know, home working and different cultures as to whether, you know, it's measured by how long somebody can evidence they've been sitting at their PC or what they're actually doing. And is it about, you know, how they actually achieve what they're doing, or is an element of it in the way they do it, back to the culture, the values, the behaviours associated with it? I think the concept of biases in a system is quite an interesting one. Certainly, you know, if you have the annual appraisal, then there's that sense that it's only recent things are remembered. Not many managers are very good at documenting things through the year. That there's often a bias around first impressions. You know, somebody gets a label when they start, and it can be quite difficult to move that on. You know, somebody can have the likeness bias if, you know, somebody gets on with somebody at an individual level. So I think that's a really interesting thing to think about. And then the last one is about, you know, how do you manage that? And I view it as a tension between organisations want metrics, they want an audit trail and, you know, a history of somebody's employment with an organisation. And then the other things that we know about the benefits of having really informal systems that are built on trust and open communication, feedback and dialogue in the moment, and how you can create something that somehow balances those. So perhaps, I don't know, I'm not having a particularly structured conversation for you at this part. These are just some things that I was thinking about. So I will take them down and put you back into the rooms we'll go for another 10 minutes. We should just about get away with that, and then chance for some perhaps key point from each room at the end of your discussion would be good. So if you could agree somebody that's comfortable to talk back into the room, that would be great. So I will keep you in the same rooms, see you back in 10 minutes.
So,
hello again. We've all lost a few.
There's been some messages saying that people have got to leave to go to other things. So,
fair enough.
Fine. Some people might only get 30 minutes lunch break, haven't they?
True. Very true.
Yes.
So what was this?
can people clearly articulate what good performance looks like? Where is your focus, input, output? What biases are in the system? How do you manage the tension between an audit trail and informal system built on open communication? I mean, that last point, I mean, that just goes back to what I said before about what we instigated in the corporation that I was in before, just the chin wag, because it was a crossover between the two. The daily interactions were very informal. It was designed to be that way, because people were opening up. You know, they would talk about all sorts. And then what you would do once a month, say, you would slightly formalize it so that you could actually capture, you know, key points, observations, objective set, etc. So it was a cross between the two, and it worked really well. So so you did have your audit trail, but there was that ongoing open dialogue, which kind of made the actual sit down meeting, if you like, not scary at all for anybody. Because everybody knew kind of what was going to be discussed. They'd already been previously discussing it. So yeah, it's I'm a big advocate for it. I think you get more out of people that way, but that's just my own opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would agree also. And in an organisation I used to work at, I used to sit down with my team monthly and talk about their work and what they were doing. And always the question was, well, what help, support do you need from me? I mean, most of the time they were happy and trundled off, but I think it is about having that support. And I think in relation to the first question, what does good performance look like? Well, I think it depends upon the situation, really. What can work well in one situation doesn't always work so well in another one. So I think it can be very specific in relation to times. But I also think that there's something around learning from each other as a group, isn't there, within the team, and pointing out when things have gone well, when somebody's had that success, and perhaps getting them to talk to the rest of the team about it. What made it a successful interview?
But then I don't know about you, I struggle to blow my own trumpet. Do you know what I mean? So if I've had a success or I've achieved something, and then my MD comes to me and says, right, we're going to have a Zoom meeting and I want you to tell everybody how well you've done and how you've achieved that. I just want to curl up in the corner and die, because I'm just doing my job. I wouldn't say that, you know, it's a massive achievement. It's just something that, but yeah, if I think it's difficult singling people out, depending on whether they're happy to blow their own trumpet.
Yeah, I mean, I just think, and that's the beauty as well, regular conversations. I mean, and you'd think it was quite a normal thing, wouldn't you? But a lot of managers don't. They don't talk to their people. It's like, you know, they've got that very, I'm the manager, you're the employee. Well, no, actually, you're all in it together. But one is steering the ship.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I think if they were to just have normal everyday conversations, they'd find out a hell of a lot more. For instance, they'd know that you don't like blowing your own trumpet, so that, you know, if they did want to celebrate something, then they would do it in a slightly different way that didn't make you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot to be said for just chatting.
Yeah.
But, you know, in a constructive way.
Yeah, I just wanted to actually sort of like follow on what Lindsay and Elaine were saying in terms of management. I think there's some form of I think that there's a need for possibly for some of them to retrain, because, you know, when you're going to have this situation now that we've got the return to work, people, you know, they've been furloughed, you know, all sorts of situations have actually happened. Some people have been still working in the office, and you're going to have a lot of complexities coming back, and management has to be in tune with that. So before they actually sort of set out their policies, they should be in the position to sort of like hear the frustrations of the team and work through it, because once that's actually sort of like lifted,
then you can actually get back on an even trail, because people need to actually sort of like, you know, they've had problems in the homes, they've been shielding other people, they've possibly, you know, they're possibly very anxious about getting back into work again, and really sort of like overzealous with the cleaning and the routine and the procedures that have been set in place in the office, before even settling down to their task and the relevant objectives within work. So managers have to sort of like fine tune and really sort of like work with the support and the healing of the employees. Like you say, Lindsay, there should be a time to talk, and if things are suppressed, then it's only going to backfire, isn't it? So it's a situation that has to be sort of like worked with. That's my view.
So we've got we've got 3 minutes left. I think we need to decide on who's feeding back to the group.
Well, I mean, I'm happy to talk about, you know, what I know, which is, you know, the openness of having a chat, basically, which I know sounds quite bizarre, but
well, there is a stigma attached, isn't there, to performance development review, and yeah. my view of it is it's always been negative, but I think that's because of the industry that I'm in. It's very KPI heavy, so if you've not hit your KPIs, you will be asked why they've not been hit. So my view of a PDR is negative, and it shouldn't be that way. It should be a positive experience.
I think you're in a majority. I mean, that used to be the view in the corporation that I was in, but we completely flipped it. Because we knew that people would see it as, oh my God, you know, it's bureaucracy gone mad.
Yeah.
So we flipped it successfully. So
so actually, before putting any systems or processes into place, it's about communicating with your employees and getting them on board as to
having the dialogue. Having
a PDR isn't about what you haven't achieved, it's what about we can do to help you achieve.
Exactly.
You know, I think it's about agreeing what the performance review is about, what you're aiming to do and to get out of it as well.
Yeah. I think, you know, someone else mentioned in the wider group about culture. I think, you know, if you can assess what's going to land well with the culture of your organisation, then, you know, rather than one size fits all.
Absolutely. Working in the larger organisation that I worked in, our KPIs were based on company-wide what was classed as standard. So for argument's sake, 28 business development calls a week will achieve so many jobs being picked up, which will achieve so many CVs being sent. But actually, all the different specialisms within that organisation, it's more effective for me to speak to candidates rather than do sales calls, because I recruit HR professionals. So HR people aren't candidates and they aren't clients, they're both.
Yeah.
So it's being able to adjust depending on the team or the department that you're working in, rather than having a company-wide expectation.
Yeah, I think the other thing, and you touched on this, sorry, I don't know your name. We've just got HR recruit, but
Claire, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, you touched on this about you know, what to do in preparation for rolling out these things. And I do think like an employee engagement, whether it's a survey or a heartbeat survey, even just to get a feel for people's mood, rather than just seeing it as, right, this is an exercise, we've got to do it, irrespective of how people are feeling.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, they all interlink, I think.
Yeah. We have no performance development reviews where I am at the moment. None. Which is,
and does it work?
We work remote.
Has it worked?
Well, no, because we work remotely. So I don't know how well I'm doing.
Right.
And whether I'm achieving what they want me to.
Yeah.
They should have a chin wag.
Okay, so what was coming out of the discussions? I'll just go in room order this time. So room one, what key points did you come up with?
Is that us?
That's Elaine. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay, so we kind of were we were going around looking at first time we touched on the audit trail versus the open communication side of things, because what I was talking to the ladies about were the process that I had in place at my last corporate, the corporate that I worked with. And that was ditching completely the laborious paper process, what was perceived to be attached to performance management, and rolling out a program which was basically called Chinwag, which was getting managers and people to actively talk to each other on a regular basis. So you formalize that monthly, but you'd had a lot of conversations prior to having that formal objective setting, agreeing between you what was going to happen. So you had your audit trail, but both sides got a lot more out of it because it was well received, and people chat on a daily basis. So it's a normal thing for people to do. So
thank you. I just love that, the labeling of it, Chinwag. It's just a whole different, everything emotive around it is so different. And actually, I do what some people I know, you do have some challenges in some particular sectors where you're actually reportable to other organisations. And I mean, in the care sector, you have CQC, and they come in and they want to see a trail of, appraisals and things. So sometimes you're actually hitting your head against a wall that, that's a bit hard. Okay, room 2, Anna, Catherine, Cheryl, what did you come up with? Thank you, Lindsay, for that. Oh, that was the biggest group. Somebody must be brave in there.
Well, I think I'll try and summarise. Okay. We talked about a few things, but really the managers' hesitance to get involved in the process, and actually the fear that the managers have. We actually got swayed a bit because we discussed about companies coming out and saying they don't have any HR, and how actually that impacts on what our role is. And saying that really it's a coaching role and an encouraging role to encourage managers to have those conversations, because that's probably the biggest block. Managers maybe being worried about saying the right thing. And then Cheryl was sharing some information about the actions that they've taken to encourage conversations in the business. So we kind of strayed off topic a bit, more into territory about actually how do we encourage these conversations to happen, and make sure that they're happening. And we were getting into territory of, well, does that sway then again take us away from focusing on linking those objectives or linking performance to company performance, and we ran out of time. But it was interesting to hear about what businesses are doing to try and encourage managers to have those conversations, or maybe HR filling that supporting role there.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Group 3, Angie, Anthony, Emily, Kenny. Anybody? Okay, we'll go on to group 4. Carol, Catherine, Suzanne, Tracy.
I'll talk if nobody minds. Again, we had quite a varied conversation, some good key points. I'll be honest with you, my view was, and it goes to that point about, can we articulate good performance? For me, it's always about, what is it that you're trying to achieve? Why are you doing a performance review? Or why have you got your process? Is it about talent? Is it about looking back? Is it about KPIs? Is it linked to pay? Are you just trying to push a pay rise through for whatever purpose? So being very clear about what the objective is, how does it add value to your business, to the individual, rather than a tick box exercise. There was a good point about
Flo was saying that she had oh, sorry, Susan.
All right.
Yeah, Flo was saying about having to she was going through an exercise of trying to re-look at what managers had done with regards to performance reviews, because it was linked to their pay and
pay increases, and so they were having a bit of a nightmare with trying to reevaluate that process.
Yeah.
I think the key point of, I think was, I can't remember who it was about varying processes. It might have even been yourself, Carol.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
But don't assume that you have to have the same process for the same job role for everybody. Make it relevant for them and to the job and to their status, to the purpose that you're trying to achieve. It might be a quick process, you know. We acknowledge that there are advantages and disadvantages for both the audit versus the open communication, as in tribunal versus the chinwag thing. So there was all sorts of things, you know, and yes, we recognise the bias, but that was probably sort of where we came from. But
thank you. Sorry, I'm just conscious of time. We need to wrap up in a minute. So I just quickly want to give the last room a chance to throw in their contribution. Desmond, Gemma, Jackie, and sorry, the other names doesn't come up on the. No, nobody from that group. Okay, well, hopefully, you know, as you know, the purpose of these sessions is really to encourage discussion, to provoke thinking, so that you can, you know, leave and, you know, reflect and see how you might want to translate anything back into your workplace. So I hope we've achieved that today in terms of the conversations that you've had. So shall I just pass back to you, Claire, to close and whatever you need to say?
Lovely, thank you. So thank you all for your time today. Just to let you know that I have been recording this session, because I know a lot of people try to take notes and it you know, sometimes it doesn't work, the slide moves or whatever the case may be. So it has been recorded, so once I've had it chopped and sorted out, I can send that recording on to you. Just let me know if you do want a recording, and I'll follow up with an email with the slides that Marion has used as well. So if you've got any questions or any other ideas that you've thought of that we can help you with, then obviously I'll be more than happy to share that information with the people that have joined this call today, and see if we can get some responses for you. But once again, thank you very much for attending today, and hopefully we'll see you at our next one.